If you don't plan, you're stupid.
Welcome to If You Don't Plan, You're Stupid with estate planning attorney Andrew Rosenberg. Andy has helped hundreds of Florida families avoid probate court, protect their legacy, and stop making costly legal mistakes. I'm your host, John Lieberman, and today we're talking about some of the most common estate planning mistakes Andy sees in his practice, and most importantly, how you can avoid them. This is episode 8, the biggest estate planning mistakes people make in Florida. Andy, it's good to see you again. How are you?
Hey, John, I'm doing great. Happy Friday, my friend.
Yes, you as well. My gut tells me that people make many mistakes when it comes to estate planning. So let's get to it. What is the number one, in your experience, the number one estate planning mistake you see people make time and time again in Florida?
Well, it's hard to do a number one. There's a lot, but if I had to pick a number one, I'm thinking I would pick procrastination. People are freaking lazy. Okay? People are afraid to talk about death. People are afraid to plan for death. Okay? And so this is just my opinion, John.
Yeah.
My opinion is that because of this procrastination issue, things don't get done. And, I talk about this a ton in my workshop, John. I always tell people there may not be a tomorrow. Okay. You may not, everyone wants to put it off. I'll deal with it tomorrow. I'll do my estate plan tomorrow. I'll deal with it next week. Well, guess what? You may not have a tomorrow. You may not have a next week. And I hate to tell you the amount of stories I've talked about in the past episodes of when there wasn't a tomorrow. So if I had to, in my opinion, the biggest, most common mistake that people have is they just don't sit down and get it done. That would be number one. I have a couple others I'm going to list, but that would be my number one.
So that's number one. Editorial note, I sure hope there's a tomorrow for both Andy and I and all of our loved ones and all of you out there. But actually, Andy, back to serious stuff, and I think I fall into this category. A lot of people think, myself included, that just having a will is enough. Is that a false sense of security?
100% false sense of security. And I've talked about this a ton in our episodes. And you know who I blame, John? I blame the movies. I blame the movies on this. And here's why. I'll give you an example I talked about before. I'm going to talk about it again. I watched not that long ago one of my favorite movies. I don't know if you ever seen it, the Clint Eastwood movie, Gran Torino.
Oh, sure. Yep.
All right. So in that movie, he gets killed at the end. And at the end, everyone's in the attorney's office and the attorney's reading the will, right? And then at the end, the credits roll and the one friend of his, the Oriental descent person, gets the Gran Torino car or whatever it was and drives off, and it's over. That's not what happens, okay? Yeah. When you have a will, you're guaranteeing probate court, and that's a problem. So yes, it's a huge sense of false security because people think, and it's because of the movies, people think that when you have a will and you have less than a certain amount of money, that you just get it. It just goes automatically. And unfortunately, there's this process that has to happen, and it's called probate court. And it takes time, it's expensive, and it's public record. So there's a lot of problems with it. So my answer is, it's a mess. If you think you have a will and you're taken care of, you're wrong, completely wrong.
It's interesting you said that. It's sort of like in the crime movies where they get the DNA match back in about 4 minutes, which is just not how criminal investigations work. But again, it's the same analogy. So let me ask you this. What can go wrong when people name the wrong beneficiaries or forget to update their beneficiaries, things like that?
Well, I mean, a lot can go wrong. And if you ask me what's the second most common mistake, is that what you just said, is not updating the beneficiaries. And I see it all the time, and it's frustrating to see as the attorney. Okay. But I see how easily it can happen. And what can go wrong is as follows. Imagine if you get divorced and you never updated your beneficiary forms and you passed away, and your beneficiary in the life insurance is your wife, ex-wife now. Guess who gets it?
The ex-wife.
Yeah. So you want to know what can go wrong? The answer is everything can go wrong. So it's really important to update your beneficiaries on a consistent basis. And I say it all the time in our podcast, is that estate planning, again, is dynamic. Okay. It's not static, meaning things change, and you need to really consistently make sure you're up to date with your documents, because life changes. You may get divorced, you may get remarried, you may have a grandchild born or a new child born, you may have a death in the family that affects things. Maybe you lost a job, and it changes your whole outlook on what you want to do and how you want to do things. All these things are life. And so you got to really be aware of that. So if number one common mistake is procrastination, number two on that list for me would be not updating your beneficiaries on a consistent basis. And what happens if you have, I see this all the time. I know we're getting on a side topic, John, but we're talking about beneficiary forms. What happens? I see this a lot. You name your spouse as the primary beneficiary of a life insurance or IRA or 401k, and then you name your kids as a contingent beneficiary, right? What happens if your kids are under the age of 18 and then you pass away and your wife, you never updated it, right? And it said it went to your wife, and your wife unfortunately died 3 years earlier, right? And now it's going to go to your two kids, and let's say they're 16 and 12. We have a major problem now because the beneficiaries are under 18 in this situation, which means that now, besides given to minor kids, we have to open up a guardianship court for the kids to get the money until they're 18 years of age, which means a lot of money in court system.
Well, I mean, I feel like I should be scribbling a ton of notes. This is so interesting, but I think the bottom line here is the more preparation you do while you're alive makes it simpler for those who are left after you pass away.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. There's a recent death, a famous person that passed away. Everyone should remember Gene Hackman,
Mhm.
right? And you've seen it in the papers over the past, passed away 6 months ago or however long it's been. And have you seen all the problems going on with that estate?
Yeah.
And you want to know why? I'll give you an example. Another problem or misconception is there's potentials for conflict if you don't consistently update things, right? So in this crazy scenario, this gives you an idea how crazy estate planning can be, is the Gene Hackman case. Gene Hackman named his wife as beneficiary on everything, okay? And then he didn't name a contingent beneficiary.
And she died at the same time.
She died first.
First, yeah.
She died first.
Yeah.
So now the question becomes, who gets this huge estate? And so now there's a huge fight with charities that supposedly he wanted to give money to, and the kids that he completely disinherited. They say that they're entitled to the money. And why did all this happen? Because there wasn't contingency beneficiaries named.
Wow.
And because they didn't think about the situation where what happens if his 20 or 30-year younger wife would die before him. So that's a real life example of how this crap can happen.
Yeah, look, if it can happen to somebody with the size of an estate that Gene Hackman had and the kind of, you would think, good professional people he had around him because of his income, then it can happen to anybody, because if he can make those mistakes and his people, then this could happen to anybody out there.
Yeah, well, here's another story. I live in the Miami area, and everyone knows the Miami Dolphins. And they were originally owned by the Robbie family,
Hmm.
Joe Robbie and his whole family, and they had to sell the team because they didn't have proper estate planning, and they had a huge tax problem when he passed away. And they had to literally sell the team to pay the tax. That's why they got rid of it.
Wow. Wow. I want to get in the weeds on a couple things that I think people want to know about. We covered pretty much review or update your estate plan whenever there is a change in circumstances in your life. But a couple kind of more in the weeds questions for you, Andy. One is, what are some kind of hidden dangers of co-owning property or having joint accounts with adult children, for example?
Well, I hit this topic a lot in my workshops. This is a huge, in my opinion, this is a huge no-no. So what you need to understand is, let's talk about real estate, but it could be bank accounts, it could
Hmm.
be brokerage accounts, it could be almost anything that you want to put your kids on as joint tenants with rights or survivorship. So what you need to understand is that when one of them passes away, let's say that I own a brokerage account with my son Jason, right? And if I were to pass away, then it will automatically go to Jason. It's joint tenants with rights of survive. It's whoever survives who gets it. Okay. So in that situation, Jason would get it. Well, the first problem with that is that you could potentially, not on purpose, unintentionally disinherit your children. So
Hmm.
let me give you an example. Let's say we got three kids, okay? And two kids are in different parts of the country, and one of the kids is locally, and I'm getting older, and I need some help handling things. I'm not good with the finances anymore. So I name my child number one here. I put my child number one on the account to be able to write checks and to do everything. I see that all the time, right? And then I have a will or a trust or whatever, and it says that everything when I pass away goes equally to all three, a third, a third, a third. And then we have this bank account, right, that we put my number one child on, and let's say the bank account has $50,000 in it, and I pass away. That 50,000 is now child number one's money. So now I've
Hmm.
unintentionally disinherited my other two kids out of the 50,000. And legally, the other two kids have no rights whatsoever. So they're SOL, unfortunately. So
Wow.
that's the number one scenario that I see, is that you unintentionally disinherit kids. What are some other problems with naming kids on accounts? Well, same scenario. We got my son and I on a bank account, and let's say that my son, let's change it. Let's say that I have investment property. Okay, I own an investment property with I put my son on there just because it's easier. I wanted to make sure it wouldn't go through probate court, right? And let's say I decide I want to sell it. I can't sell it now without my child agreeing to it,
Uh,
because they're on title to that account. So it's a problem.
hmm.
So that's another problem. Here's really the three big problems that I have when you put kids on different accounts or real estate or whatever it might be. The number one problem, let's say that, God forbid, my son gets in a car accident and it's his fault. And he really injured somebody, permanent injuries, and they're coming after him. They're going to sue him for, whatever he has in the car insurance, but they're also going to potentially come after him personally. And so the attorney files suit, and guess what's part of that lawsuit? My joint account that is
Account.
with Jason in that situation. So if the kids are getting sued, it's all those joint accounts are part of it. What happens if my son got married and then ended up going through a divorce? That joint account is
Yep.
now part of the divorce.
Wow.
And then the last one, what happens if he's not smart financially and he has to file for bankruptcy? What happens to that bank account? It's part of the bankruptcy. So, and don't think this doesn't happen, John. I see it all the time. I'll give
Oh,
you one other story. I had a woman that came to my class and I talked about this exact topic in the workshop. And I talked about not putting kids on accounts because of the three things that we just mentioned, divorce, bankruptcy, and all that. And she came up to me right afterwards and said, "Holy crap, Andy, I need to meet with you like right now." And I said, "I can't meet with you right now. You got to make an appointment." She makes an appointment. I sit down with her in the conference room. She says, "I have a 40-year-old son. He's a chiropractor, and everything I have is in joint with him." I said, "Okay. So what's going on?" She goes, "He's not doing well financially. He's going to file for bankruptcy." And I
oh,
looked at her right in the eye and I said, "Listen, ma'am, there's nothing I could do. I don't know what the clawback rules are if we move accounts and got him off the accounts because of bankruptcy issues. So now," I said, "you need to meet with a bankruptcy specialist to see what the rules are regarding that." I never saw her again. I couldn't do anything.
oh, that's
But that's
heartbreaking.
but
Yeah,
that's real life.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Speaking of real life, why do people plan to fail for? So death obviously is one thing, but incapacity, and how
Yeah.
big of a problem could that be down the line? For whatever
Yeah.
reason, you become incapacitated.
Yeah, everyone when everyone meets with me, they only want to talk about doing trust or wills and all that stuff because they're concerned about, death.
Mhm.
And I, as the attorney, I'm concerned about that, but I'm more concerned about incapacity because
Wow.
the odds of incapacity are pretty high. And unfortunately, if you don't plan properly for the incapacity, which is almost a whole nother topic that we can talk about on another workshop, if you don't plan for the incapacity side of things, it could be a major problem because people don't realize there's a bifurcation of the court system. When someone passes away, if we have to go through the courts, it's called probate court.
Mhm.
When someone becomes disabled or incapacitated, there's another court system called guardianship court. Completely different, but it's different. So, a good example, John, Britney Spears. You remember the singer out in
Yeah,
California,
of course. Yeah,
right?
the guardianship case. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So she had a guardian. She was over 18, and
Yep.
she was mentally unable to handle things. So they called out there a conservatorship, which is a guardianship, and her father was involved, right? And it was a whole fiasco because he screwed up the money and stuff. But the point is, she didn't have anything in place to avoid that system. There are things in place, such as a durable power of attorney, that we can talk a whole nother lecture on or podcast on that will avoid those types of things.
Wow. So much to think about. And Andy, before we let you go, you told us a few minutes ago about the woman who came in with the son who was the chiropractor. So I guess I want to just follow up on that tangentially, which is, what's your advice for someone who's watching this, listening, and starting to think, wait a second, I've made almost every mistake that Andy has outlined in this podcast. What should they do? What's the first thing they should do?
The first thing you should do is you need to gather all of your legal documents and meet with an estate planning or elder law attorney to review things. Nothing is set in stone until you're disabled or you pass away. So until that happens, everything is changeable. And if you're not comfortable with who you've named or what you've done, guess what? You have full control to make the changes. So my advice to you, John, in that situation for the people out there, gather everything. Don't sit on your ass. Go make an appointment and meet with someone to really discuss it because if you don't, no one will.
It's a good wake up call because you never think it's going to happen, but death happens to all of us, and the devil's in the details. Andy, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us on If You Don't Plan Your Stupid Mistakes in Estate Planning. As you heard, many times they just don't show up until it's too late, until your family is the ones who have to pay for it. So if you're ready to get it done right, visit rosenberglawfirm.net, book a consultation. Andy and his team will take really good care of you. You've heard all the pitfalls. Don't let it happen to you and your family. And also, don't forget to subscribe, share this show, and leave us a review. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.